Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run for the latest weather warnings, as we have got numerous yellow warnings issued over the next few days, and we now have an amber warning issued for rain through Tuesday for parts of Scotland. We'll look at the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as we are going to see some really unsettled stormy weather through the coming days with some heavy rain, some heavy snow in places, and some stronger winds. Now, we have seen one positive development over the past 24 hours, and that is the system on New Year's Day has decreased quite substantially in intensity. Now, because it's nowhere near as intense as we thought it could be a couple of days ago, it means that the temperature gradient isn't quite as strong, which means less of that precipitation will be snow. And of course, the rain will also be not quite as heavy with lower temperature gradient, and the low in general is nowhere near as intense, so the winds, instead of being potentially 70 miles per hour, look more around the 50 to 60 at most. So that is one positive. However, as we head into the longer range, we are still looking like it is going to go very cold for the end of the week, with increasing amounts of snow in the north and the east. And then comes the big headaches into this upcoming weekend and start of the following week, where we're all looking like we're going to be sat in exceptionally cold air. We are going to see some low pressure systems trying to approach from the Atlantic. As I said, this has caused massive headaches over the past 24 hours or so, with runs being all over the place. The GFS, as we saw in yesterday's video, went mild all of a sudden for its 6 o'clock run, and it continued the trend throughout yesterday. However, today, the last 3 runs, it's reverted back to much colder. And that reversion was not only within the operation run, but also the ensembles, and that is why we have got such an amount of uncertainty. The ECMWF has come down the opposite. It was pretty cold yesterday, it's now gone milder, and the midday run today is much colder than the midnight run, but it's nowhere near as blocked, as sustained as the GFS. So yeah, the longevity of this cold spell and intensities, and whether we'll see significant snowfall, and where that significant snowfall will be, to be honest, we've still not got concrete answers. Hopefully though, in the next couple of days. But I did hold off on this video just because this morning we had such contradictions between the models. I would be sat here saying, one model saying we're going to be in a potentially exceptionally cold spell, one of the coldest Januaries we've had in many years. Another one is showing a brief colder snap before it goes milder. So yeah, wait till this evening. We have got a little bit more clarity, but still not complete clarity. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we can start to see the first disruption arriving. And it has arrived throughout today, and will continue through this evening. We've seen this weather front, which is dividing the very cold air and the mild air, appear across parts of Scotland. Now, most of this is falling as rain, but we are seeing some snow over the higher ground and even to low-lying areas across the far north of Scotland, where already that exceptionally cold air has arrived. However, it is going to struggle to sink southwards in the next day. By New Year's Day into the 2nd of January, that's when it's going to flood in for all. And then we do see the risk of snow quite widely, but mostly from convection. So it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what we'll see. Now, do you put on the temperatures this evening? You can see how it is chilly for most, but it's really only cold for Scotland. And you can see here is the higher ground of Scotland, and then generally northern areas, even to low-lying areas here, it is very cold. As that exceptionally cold air mass starts to dig in, you can see Norway, Iceland and Greenland all exceptionally cold, and this is where all our air is coming from in the next week or so, directly from the north. And in the meantime, while we still have a very strong temperature gradient, we are going to see some very disruptive weather over the coming days. So if you do now have a look at those weather warnings for the disruptive weather over the coming days, we have this rain and snow warning issued until tomorrow at midnight. So it's a blanket warning, not expecting any major upgrades to this individual warning, but for a few tens of millimetres and maybe significant snow over the higher ground. Nothing too unusual for end of December and start of January in terms of the snowfall, but it is going to be quite a lot of precipitation, so it could cause issues, and of course, it's on top of what we could see in the coming days. Into Tuesday, we still have that big rain and snow warning, but then we've got this amber warning for rain across parts of central and northern Scotland, because we believe through tomorrow afternoon, especially tomorrow afternoon, during the day in general, we are going to see that snow level rise a bit. So these areas actually have a bit of snow at the moment, but it will turn all back to rain as we do see milder air just shifting slightly further northwards. For a time during Tuesday, the last day of December, turning this all to rain, and then we could see significant rain in this area of the Highlands and the Grampians, another 50 to 70 millimetres, where we see a lot of relief rainfall. We've got a snow warning issued here for the far northern Isles of Scotland up towards the Orkney and Shetland. You can see it's medium likelihood and low impact, and again we're looking at a good 2 to 5 centimetres of snow, partially due to some of the precipitation from this weather front, but also we're going to start to see northerly winds pushing in. So we're going to see some persistent precipitation in terms of snow, but also we are going to see heavy snow showers starting to pack in as the northerly wind eventually winds out into New Year's Day. So that's kind of a transitional warning there, a bit from potentially the weather front, but again that could turn to rain with that milder bit of air, but also then for snow showers. Elsewhere, we've got wind warnings issued for the far north of England and for southern Scotland. Again, we're looking at 50 to 60 quite widely, maybe just about getting to 70. Again, we're not expecting as strong winds as we thought potentially yesterday, where I thought there could potentially be an upgrade to amber, as we were seeing some quite violent runs, to be honest. But that low has not looked anywhere near as intense as we do head into New Year's Day, and we can see a similar warning issued here for Northern Ireland. Again, 45 to 50, maybe up to 65 in a few spots. And then a widespread rain warning issued here for parts of Wales and northwest England from 6 p.m. tomorrow until 6 p.m. on Wednesday. So this is mainly more for New Year's Day. Again, we're looking at kind of 30 to 50 widely, up to 60 to 80, maybe even up to 100. These same areas could have seen snow only a couple of days ago from the runs. The reason why we think it now will be mostly rain, but maybe a bit of snow over the higher ground or on the back edge, is because that temperature gradient is nowhere near as strong. It's contributing to a reduction in the strength of the low pressure, so actually lower amounts of precipitation than initially anticipated, and lower amounts in terms of those wind speeds, but also will mean lower snow, as we don't see that very strong temperature gradient without all that exceptionally cold air trying to undercut it. It's a bit of a slower transition. Taking a few hours to change that air mass instead of minutes, which we were seeing from some of the runs where there was a 10 to 15 degree temperature contrast in the space of 50 miles or so. Not seeing that now for New Year's Day. And I know some people will be wanting heavy snow, wanting blizzards, but to be honest, for New Year's Day, for a bank holiday, in terms of a very disruptive weather event, fortunately has decreased in intensity. Doesn't mean there's not going to be snow, but not going to be nearly as disruptive as we thought a couple of days ago. Into Wednesday, when we start to see warnings issued for other events, we see a widespread wind warning issued for southern areas, and this is for that New Year's Day system. It is still going to be very lively, still going to be disruptive, just as I said, nowhere near as disruptive as we thought a couple of days ago. 40 to 50 quite widely, up to 60 possibly in a few spots, and maybe up to 65 to 75 across some coastal areas. And then we've got our first snow and ice warning of the colder spell that will be arriving from Wednesday until Thursday at 9 a.m. as we start to see heavy snow showers starting to pack in, 1 to 3 centimetres at low-lying areas, 5 to 10 centimetres at about 300 metres. And again, you can see elevation changes here, because of course it's slightly heavier over the higher ground, a bit of relief rainfall coming in, but also because we are going to see a slow transition to snow. It will take 6 to 12 hours, so higher ground of course going to see snow a little bit earlier. And then Thursday just got that snow and ice warning, and I think already we are going to see warnings Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for snow and ice. I just think the Met Office at the moment are holding off on issuing those warnings just because of the amount of uncertainty, as we will see in the next few charts. Now to go over to the latest UKV, this has just been updated, the 3 p.m. run, and you see the heavy rain and a bit of snow overnight tonight into the 31st. However, during the day, you can see the snow line rises just off screen there to our north, up towards the Shetland and Orkney Islands. Again, a bit of mixing there. But elsewhere, we're all into the milder air once again, and you're thinking, what cold? However, that's not how it continues. Eventually, that weather front shifts southwards again, and we see that next system arrive for New Year's Day. This is the New Year's Day storm we thought we could see. It is still a lively weather front, very strong winds associated with it, just nowhere near as intense because that low is nowhere near as developed, and it's a bit more of an elongated, stretched out low pressure system than one with a very distinct deep area or centre of the system. Now, as we head through New Year's Day afternoon, we see that system eventually completely clearing. The far southeast, a bit of squally rain mixing in there, and then look to the north. We start to see lots of heavy snow showers piling in from the North Sea and the North Atlantic, and this is where we are pretty much guaranteed to get to here for the evening of New Year's Day. Exceptionally cold air starting to pile in, and then as we head into the 2nd of January, snow showers widely down the east coast. Again, some uncertainty. It all depends on the exact intensity of any disruptions, any of these disturbances, and of course the exact wind direction. Again, all these things could subtly change in the next couple of days. So again, don't take the exact location of these showers as gospel, but the fact that there will be heavy snow showers around, that is looking very likely. Now into Friday and slowly into Saturday, we do see areas of winteriness moving in, but eventually it starts to die down into the weekend. And this is because we start to see milder air pushing up in from the southwest, and this is what gives us our intense headaches with the forecast. Now, if you look at the upper air temperatures, you can see over the coming days, we see that cold air getting pushed away to our north, and then it slams back in on New Year's Day, and by the end of New Year's Day, we're all in exceptionally cold air, -10 or even -11 isotherm pushing in for Scotland. And then you can see it's exceptionally cold through Friday. Look at that, the -12, -13 isotherm isn't too far away. So ice stays in places through Friday, and then into Saturday, look at this, still very cold. That very cold -10 or -11 degree isotherm's not too far away. But look at the bottom left, very mild air, trying to push in. Now, as this collision, that could cause significant snow, but at the same time, it will cause significant snow where that dividing line occurs. Now, this is where we're seeing the massive conflict between runs. You can see we're out to day 5 here. High resolution runs get out to day 5, day 6, but it's that day 7, day 8 range where the GFS, GM, and ECWF have been all toying with the development of this low pressure system. Now, again, if we look sort of back upstream, the strength of this low pressure system will depend on the blocking high pressure system up towards Greenland, which then depends on the complexity and the development of a low pressure system coming out of northeast Canada. So, we can go back all along the chain, and all of these little bits where there is uncertainty slowly builds up to massive uncertainty come this weekend and start of next week in terms of where does the dividing line between cold and mild air sit. So yeah, it's a real headache, but I do suspect in the next day or two, once the chain of events starts to take off, especially as we head tomorrow into New Year's Day, when that blocking high starts to properly develop, that's when I think we'll have a concrete answer. We will literally get to a stage where the models all suddenly agree. There will just be a run where everything agrees, and we suddenly know the outcome. And we'll stop seeing this toying. And as I said, it's all due to these small little chain events that keep moving around, little uncertainties in them, giving these different results. So yeah, basically, we know we're going to get to this stage by Saturday. Very cold air in place, milder air trying to push in, but it's just how this interaction really occurs. So unfortunately, if you're looking for an exact answer on the longer term prospects, we can't give it to you. But all we can say is it will turn exceptionally cold by the end of this week, probably for the weekend as well. And I'd say there's about a relatively high chance that it continues into the following week, but not guaranteed. GFS definitely on board, GM more on board, ECWF is more on board as well, but ensemble members still showing some uncertainty. Now again, let's have a look at the wind gusts. You can see that they are going to be very strong over the coming days, and see why we've got yellow warnings issued, but they're nowhere near as strong, especially on New Year's Day, as we thought a couple of days ago, where we were seeing a few 70s appearing. Not seeing that anywhere near as much now. And again, not in as large of a wind field, and not in the same direction as we were anticipating with heavy snow on the northern edge. We're not seeing that anymore, so a big reversal. But as we said, it was always on a knife edge, all dependent on the intensity of that low and the temperature gradient. Now, beyond that, you can see winds do die down, but they start to pick up a little bit more in the North Sea, as we do see quite strong northeasterly winds. So there will be quite a wind chill out there. I know they're not that strong, but coming in from the northeast, any breeze from the north or easterly direction this time of year will be very, very cold. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you can see as we head into Tuesday, you can see it's actually a pretty mild day for all. 10, 11 degrees, but I suspect for most, this is going to be the last double-digit day for a good while. You can see as we head into Wednesday, still pretty mild in the southeast for the morning, but look at that, 5 a.m, 10, 11 degrees. By midday, much colder for most, and by the middle of the afternoon, 5 or 6. And then look at Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, hovering around freezing or below freezing. And then into the 2nd of January, widespread frost, exceptionally cold night. And then into Thursday, look at this, temperatures hardly getting above freezing in many areas. 1, 2 degrees, maybe a 3 or 4 out there. But look at the amount of zeros, -1s and 1s. Anywhere where there's kind of lighter blue, that is indicating temperatures not getting much above freezing. And you can see that quite widespread there through Thursday. Into Friday, it's another exceptionally cold night. Look at the temperatures out over the North Sea. That just shows you how cold it is. The temperatures, humid temperatures over a relatively mild North Sea are even close towards freezing. So just showing you how intense this air mass is. And you can see into Friday afternoon, once again, temperatures not getting much above freezing. Again, don't take the literal temperatures as gospel, but, the ballpark, 3 or 4 degrees. It could be 1 or 2, could be 5 or 6, but most of these runs are showing it just about hovering around freezing or above freezing. Of course, with snow showers pushing in or thicker cloud, then the temperatures, of course, will be slightly colder. And then into Saturday, another exceptionally cold night. You can see wherever there's slightly milder conditions, that's because we've got a bit more cloud, but clearer skies. Look at this, -6, -7, even towards the south coast. It's that cold. And then Saturday, once again, temperatures hardly getting above 2, 3 or 4 degrees. Again, feeling exceptionally cold. And of course, if we saw a weather front bumping into this air, it would fall most guaranteed as snow. As you can see, the dew points as well, again, widely towards freezing or below freezing. So yeah, UKV pretty much in very strong agreement now, with other runs, of course, that it's going to be exceptionally cold from around Wednesday evening all the way through to the weekend. But it's just how long does it last after the weekend? Now, if you look at the latest GFS, we did have a big wobble yesterday, and that wobble continued through most of yesterday, but it's reversed throughout today. The 6 o'clock run, and now the midday run, and I think even the midnight run last night was pretty cold. And you can see here, that low pressure system moves through on the 31st, and the New Year's Day system doesn't really actually appear too much. It's this little kink in the isobars. It doesn't develop into a succinct area of low pressure, and that's because the temperature gradient isn't quite as strong. It is still strong, that's why we still see that significant weather front, squall feature potentially, but it's nowhere near as strong. Low pressure system doesn't develop. But as I said, the subsequent events all depends on the development of these low pressure systems towards northeast Canada, and of course the subsequent blocking high. Now the GFS, we see a temporary lull in precipitation later this week, and that's why when you looked at the UKV, there was initially a lot of snow showers, but then it died down a little bit, and that's because high pressure topples in for a slight period of time. That will mean the temperatures will, though, be very cold overnight, will be much colder overnight, but of course there will be reduction in winteriness through Thursday, Friday, and into Saturday. However, into the subsequent days, we see this low pressure system trying to approach from the southwest. It doesn't make much inroads, and it stays well to our south. The runs that showed milder conditions pushed this into the low towards Scandinavia, and we suddenly ended up on the milder side, especially southern areas on the milder side of the low pressure system. But at this point, the milder air stays down towards Portugal and Spain. We are in the exceptionally cold air, and we stay there with lower pressure piling in from the east. We would likely see lots of snow showers, lots of convection, and small disturbances adding to that. Eventually, though, we do see a bit of a high pressure topple. It could veer the winds in from an easterly for a longer period of time, but eventually we do see more high pressure interactions. Yes, still low pressure trying to push in from the northeast, and that would still keep it unsettled. And actually, we do see quite a deep area of low pressure moving through there. And again, that could produce some significant snow. Again, could mix something milder in, but with the amount of cold air we've got embedded at the surface, we would expect there to be significant snow. And all the way to the end of the run, we slowly start to see a milder pattern develop. But out pretty much until the 13th, 14th, we're all in exceptionally cold air. 2 weeks here of us basically sitting below the -5 isotherm. We're exceptionally cold. 2 meter temperatures, hardly going to go above freezing even here on the 13th, and the subsequent days, hardly going to go above freezing. We can just scroll through this quickly and you can see very little getting much above 4, 5 on the mildest days. So yeah, very cold, very blocked, and potentially very snowy. But again, those sort of details with precipitation, that's not something we can discuss at this stage when we've not even got the weather sorted out until Saturday, Sunday, when we could see potentially some disruptive snow arriving from the south. But yeah, GFS back on board. Again, not going to say this is definitely going to happen because of the amount of wobbling we have been seeing, but it is encouraging if you're looking for something that is sustained, cold, and could last the first half of January. Now, if you compare to the GM, which did wobble yesterday as well, in its midday run and its midnight run, but of course it only is run twice a day, so we've only actually had 2 runs where it's kind of been a bit wobbling. But the latest midday run is back towards something a little bit colder. Not quite as clear-cut as the GFS, but it is still very cold. You can see that brief high-pressure topple later this week, so it will still be exceptionally cold, but maybe not quite as wintry as we initially anticipated. And then you can see into the weekend that low trying to approach from the south. It's much stronger as the block here is not quite as strong, and you can see where those upper air temperatures, the very mild upper air temperatures, start to push in. So you can see they get very close. The dividing line, we would likely see potentially some heavy snow. Whether that's across England or more into France is difficult to say. Looks like here it's more into France, but perhaps the far southwest. It's difficult to say. So you can see that the GM is very similar in terms of being very blocked, but it does push that milder air quite a lot closer than the GFS does. Subsequent days, we stay very cold, northeasterly winds, but eventually high pressure topples in. It stays very cold with easterly flow, especially in the south, but it does start to turn less wintry as we do see the high pressure topple in. So still very cold, still very blocked, still opportunities for snow, but not quite historic and disruptive as the GFS would be. But by no means is it wobbling and cancelling out any sustained cold. It is definitely very cold, just not quite as cold as the GFS. Now the ECMWF is similar to that GEM run. It wobbled significantly yesterday in the 12 o'clock and even the midnight run, but it has now gone back towards something quite a bit colder. Not guaranteed, but it is definitely showing something a lot colder than it was earlier. You can see the northerly winds arriving later this week. That big block towards Greenland, not quite as strong as we were seeing from other runs. And you can see the low pressure system is further northwards. So if we do zoom in, you can see the milder sector. It's much further northwards. So temporarily milder. But it clears, and look at this, we go back into the very cold northerly winds. And then we see another low just to the south, and that would potentially bring heavy snow. Unfortunately, we don't have the precipitation charts yet, but that would bring heavy snow in the far south. And eventually, we end the run with cold northerly winds. So yes, it does bring milder air in for a time. It would be a lot more marginal, and that snow line would push northwards, definitely much further northwards. But it's nowhere near a cancellation of the colder spell like we saw from it earlier today or even yesterday. So it seems like the GFS set a trend yesterday of it going being a wobble. Other runs followed, and then today the GFS has gone much colder once again, and other runs are coming back to something a bit colder. But until we've got them all on board with a similar pattern or the same pattern, hopefully the same pattern, I can't really say for certain what's going to happen, and that it does annoy me, as I know we have been talking about this for a number of days now, and we continue to see uncertainty, but we are starting to see runs agreeing once again, and hopefully tomorrow we should have a bit more of a definitive answer. Because I know a lot of people will be complaining, saying, oh, we saw this yesterday, or we saw this a couple of days ago. It's now not showing that, or it was showing this in this run, or that. The models at the moment are all over the place. So we are just trying to present them in the most coherent way possible. For the time being, they've gone colder once again, but don't all agree exactly how they do it. Now, if you finish by looking at the ensembles, you can see the GFS ensembles are back on board with a very cold, sustained pattern. I will show you some of the milder runs that we did have earlier. But you can see here, does go, it remains fairly mild at the moment, much colder through New Year's Day, and then it stays very cold and blocked for a good couple of weeks. And you can see longer range does go a bit milder. But generally, 90% of the ensemble members are exceptionally cold for the foreseeable future, and precipitation spikes start to appear from this upcoming weekend onwards. So that's when snow opportunities will arise. The UKV only really gets out to kind of the 5th here, 4th, 5th. So that's why we weren't seeing much snow on the UKV apart from a bit of convection, because it is mainly high pressure dominated, and you can see the pressure to drop off in the longer term. So if you are looking at the UKV and it's saying there's no snow there, it's cold but it's no snow, it's it isn't, I want to see some snow. Don't worry, it would arrive just longer term, perhaps 5th, 6th, 7th of Jan onwards, once the pressure drops and we see a stronger northeasterly wind. And you can see this on the new snow depth spikes, more snow depth spikes appearing there later on in January. Less so here into early January. Dew points well below freezing, so very high chance of snow we see precipitation. And the 2 metre temperatures, look at this, hardly getting much above 2 or 3 degrees, all the way out to the kind of the 12th or even 13th there. Now, I do just want to show you the 6 p.m. run yesterday. I was seeing a lot of people saying cold run cancelled, and the reason for this is you can see a lot of milder runs appearing, but slowly those milder runs have dissipated away, and you can start to see we are back on board with something much colder. There are still milder runs there, but they're nowhere near as high as they were at the 6 p.m. run yesterday, or even the midday run yesterday. Midday run yesterday was even worse than that 6 p.m. run. Unfortunately, we can't go back and have a look at it. But yeah, there'll be some images floating around Twitter, or if you look at the video yesterday, the 6 o'clock run wasn't much better either. There were a lot of mild runs. The ensemble white line was actually above average in that midday run. So yeah, did look like cold run cancelled, but it has gone much colder once again, completely flip-flopping. Now, if we finish by looking at the latest ECMWF ensembles, unfortunately, this is the latest midday run. It's not fully come out yet as I'm recording this. It comes out around 9 p.m. and I'm recording this just after 8. So unfortunately, it's not out. So I have to go back to the midnight run. And you can see this is kind of what we were seeing with the GFS yesterday. Very cold for 3 or 4 days. And then it goes very mild. And then kind of flopping between very cold and mild for the foreseeable future. And that was because we were seeing that dividing line, that low pressure system arriving from the southwest and pushing in. Now, this midnight run, as I'm recording this around 8 p.m, it is now 20 hours old, near enough. So, again, I wouldn't put too much value in this just because we've seen a lot of runs since, including the operational ECMWF and all of the GFS and GEM and GFS ensembles have all reverted to something much colder. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, the ensembles, and they come out in the next hour or so, I'll have a look at them. In the next hour or so, hopefully they're a bit more on board with the GFS. Not because, I definitely want disruptive snow, but just the fact that I want them to agree so that we can actually have a bit more of a consensus so we can actually talk about what's going to happen. Whereas at the moment, we try and talk about what's going to happen and then suddenly the model switch on us. So hopefully we see some consensus in the coming hours, and hopefully in tomorrow's video, as I said, we see multiple runs, consecutive runs that all agree. But you can see here what we were seeing yesterday evening and why cold run being cancelled definitely was a possibility. But it's gone colder once again, and we'll just have to wait and see what the ECMWF has later. So you can see here we've gone through all the runs, and you can see that it is still looking pretty likely that we do have a lengthy cold spell. It is looking guaranteed now. It's very cold for at least 3 or 4 days later this week. Snowfall doesn't look as intense the next couple of days as we initially thought, but there still is going to be very heavy rain, amber warning, and some stronger winds, but just nowhere near as disruptive as we're seeing a couple of days ago. But all eyes will have to be on not only the next couple of days, but of course the weekend and the following week, as that's where we could see the disruption when it comes to proper windiness. And we're not just expecting it in the far north, or at least at the moment, not just the far north. We are expecting the cold to be widespread, and that means that snow could also be widespread as well. So as I said, we'll wait and see what tomorrow has in store, but hopefully we have some very strong cross-model consensus as we do head into the new year. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.